All right, Bismillah. Okay, waterfall. Jazakumullahu Khair. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbana zidna ilman ya kareem. Okay, so as I was going through, some of the people, so I had my notes, and then obviously somebody said, okay, you know what, it'll be really nice if we could put those notes in a timeline. I said, you know what, you suggested it, you own it. That's Brother Tarif's way of doing it. So I'm learning it from him. So this person shall remain unknown, based on his own desires. And he did some favor for you guys. So he took my notes, which are all scribbles, and he put together a timeline so we can actually follow along, and then you guys can know which era we're in, and I will add more details to every era, inshallah. Okay? So last time what we talked about, so we have finished 136. We've done the Roman era. We talked about the Persian invasion. We talked about the Arab conquest. This is at the time of who? Before Umar radiallahu an. Around that time, Umar radiallahu an comes in, I think, in 690, 692. So this is before Umar the Arab multiple conquests in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that went to all the way to the border of Rome, and they came back. Then they went to Tabuk and they came back. But the intention was to keep the enemy at bay. So this happens during the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What happens was that the Jewish people in 638, they were able to liberate Jerusalem by the forces of Persians and the Jews. So they were able to get liberation. And at that moment, Jews were basically allowed to live, but there were lots of conditions. Now, Umar radiallahu an, he comes, sorry, my timeline off. He comes around 638, and in their books was something very important written, which was that a person who is going to enter and take the keys of Jerusalem, in the books of Christians, the description of Umar radiallahu an was written. Umar radiallahu an, right, he was asked by the people who were fighting at that time that come and get the keys of Jerusalem, they're ready to submit. Now he enters, and they had one ride. So Umar radiallahu anhu was riding and sharing, basically ride share, Uber ride share, but he was doing a camel ride share, okay? But it was that he is the Khalifa of the Ummah, he's Amirul Mu'mineen, and he is swapping rides at mile markers. So once my khadim rides, and another time my ride, and they keep swapping. Now, there's a lot of noise at the sisters area at the back. It just, So, what happens is at that time that Umar radiallahu an, he is about to enter Jerusalem. And his servant said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, hukka laka an tarkab. It's your right, you're about to enter Jerusalem, you must be on the ride. I should be taking the camel, the reins of the camel. He said, La, ad-dawru dawruk. This is your turn. It doesn't matter. This tells us a very important lesson. It's not about the positions. It's not about leadership, but it's about principles. And whenever leadership is entrusted in the hands of those that don't follow principles, qawaid, principles, rules, and whenever leadership is entrusted in somebody, even if they're not Muslims, they follow principles, they will prevail. They will succeed. Right? Today, the success of West that you see is that they have set a rule and they will make sure that the rule is followed. Okay? A set is, when this begins, then this cannot happen. When this happens, this cannot happen. What happens with us? We set a rule, right? In every aspect of our lives. You can look at it from the way we manage our houses, all the way to the way we manage our own department sometimes, or our own companies, our own businesses, right? Principles are compromised for comfort. So we constantly compromise principles for the sake of comfort. But why did the West succeed? Did they have higher moral values? Absolutely not. If you attended any of the Quranic character series, we philosophically broke down that the Western code of conduct is not philosophically and morally higher than the Muslim code. Absolutely not. There is no moral equivalency to the code that we have. The only difference in their progress is that when it is written, it's done. And that's how it is done. It really doesn't matter what you think at this moment, what she thinks at this moment, what he thinks. No. It's there, we must follow. Right? Recently somebody was giving an example. It was the simplest thing. Bus ride. This bus, its catchment area ends over here. This individual went all the way to the head in the Fulton County. And at the end of the day, guys, like, let me think about it for a couple of days. Go back. Sorry, a rule is a rule. It doesn't matter. You lie on 2 meters off the catchment. Your child cannot take the bus. If it was our, अरे यार 2 मीटर क्या फर्क पड़ता है यार 2 ही तो मीटर है. It's just 2 meters. ما يفرق والله مترين. ما في مشكلة يا أخي خلي يركب. الله يرحم والديك. That's how we speak. So principles are principles. Now he enters, and in the books it was written that the person who will come to take the keys, he will have on his aktaf, on his shoulder, his sandals tied. That tells you that they had gone through a patch of water, so the sandals would have gotten wet. So he had put the sandals. So in the book it was written that he would have his sandals hanging on the shoulders. وَعَلَيْهِ غُبَارٌ. He will be filled with dust. Now when he enters over there, one of the Sahabis, he says to him, he says, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Inna al-Rum dhu thaqafatin aliyah. Romans, they have very high civilization. They're highly civilized people. هل لك أن تتغير وضعك? How about we fix you up? Like, let's go into a room and change you up, because we want to make you presentable to the people that are going to give you the keys. Umar radiallahu anh responds and he says, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام. We are a nation, our pride was built on Islam. We were given izzah, we were given honor because of Islam. And if we seek to find that respect and honor in any other place other than Islam, أذلنا الله. Allah will disgrace us. Right? How many of us feel comfortable going to your work? I mean, there's no such thing as Islamic clothes. But let's say if it's a cultural day and you feel, hey man, this is my culture, my country, it's a Muslim culture, whether it is shalwar kameez. Many of us don't feel very comfortable and a sense of pride wearing that to a workplace. I'm not saying do it every single day, but like if you want to do that, how many of us will feel that today is my day of like Independence Day or whatever, and I want to present myself? What happens is, it's really funny, right? Like colonizers came to our lands, came to all of our lands, came to African lands, came to subcontinent lands. They came to all of these lands. What did they do? Today, you and I speak in our colonizers' language, and when one of our own, hamara apna, one of our own, when he has an accent in our colonizers' language, we make fun of him. Right? It's like, oh, fresh off the boat. He doesn't know how to speak English properly. Look at how they played with our psyches. Whereas, if you look at the Jewish people, they're born and raised here, but they have accent in their Englishes because they pride themselves of the Hebrew language. They pride themselves of the Hebrew language. We have a neighbor, if you born and raised, she has an accent in English. How? Because Hebrew was instilled in her, and it's not important if you have, and it doesn't matter if you have an accent in English. What command do you have in that language is what matters, right? We are worried about external appearances, kaisa bolta hai, rather than how much command you have in the English language. That is why they were terrified from Malcolm X, because when they put Malcolm X in the prison, he memorized what? What did he memorize? He memorized the dictionary. Like you memorize Quran, he memorized the dictionary. So when he came out and started giving speech, his power, his vocabulary was unmatched to any white person out there. So the only solution was to kill him. So it's the command of language that matters, but not to ever make fun of that. So he was very proud of who he was as an Arab and as a Muslim. He walked in that meeting. They looked at him and they said, "You are the exact description that we were given. We are not even going to fight you guys. Here is the key. Please," because in our books it's written, if we fight you, we're going to lose. They came out and they gave the key to him. Now, when they gave the key to him, what's the condition they put? The condition they said, listen, you can't let Jews be settled in these lands. And Umar radiallahu anhu is like, nope, this land belongs to all three religions. They all have history here. And I will not agree on a treaty that has an alienation of another religion. This is their right. They will be allowed to worship. And then he goes and tells Ayyub al-Ansari that go and find me 10 Jewish families that are from a religious hierarchy, and I will settle them in Jerusalem so they can take care of their holy sites, their sacred sites. It's not like how the history was told to us that we kicked the Jews. No. Every single time the Muslims got the power of Jerusalem, it was from the Christians who had kicked out the Jews. And it was even in Salahuddin Ayyubi's time. It was Salahuddin Ayyubi that allowed the Jews to come back again. It's absolutely distortion when Netanyahu comes and does that interview with Vox and talks about the history of distortion. Absolutely, absolutely lies. Fabricated lies. But then obviously it's on mass media and CNN sees it, so nobody cares about it. So that was a summary of the conquest, what happened. And the renewal of the Jewish community in Jerusalem was at the hands of Umar radiallahu anhu. They had been kicked out. Nobody wanted to do anything with them. Then you had in 691, Abdul Malik al-Marwan, the Dome of Rock that you see. The significance of the Dome of Rock was what? I had mentioned that in the first lecture. Who remembers? It's the airport of angels. That's the word I want you guys to use. The Dome of Rock is the airport of angels. We as Muslims, we believe in multiple realms, not just Doctor Strange. Okay? We also believe in realms. We actually truly believe, and we have evidences for that. So we believe in different realms, and these different realms, they intersect, i.e. they have a junction where they connect, and they're passageways. Okay? They're passageways. Okay? These passageways, they have a junction in this world, i.e. it connects somewhere, so anybody from that different realm has to enter through that one gate. For the angels, it's the Sakhra. It's that Dome of Rock area. That's where all the angelic beings that do not exist from this world, if they were to come in this world, or if they do come in this world, they come through them, through that gate. For example, it's a tangent, but it's an interesting story. On the burial of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, when he passed away. The night he passed away, Ahmad ibn Hanbal's son, Abdullah ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal, his next door neighbor had a brother who had become shaheed 1 year ago. So his next door neighbor sees a dream. And he sees a dream that his brother comes and knocks at the door. The door opens, he opens the door, and he sees the dream and he says, "Ya akhi, my brother, where have you been?" And why are you here in this world? He said, Ama tadri, don't you know tomorrow is the janazah of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down the ruhs of 500,000 shuhada to attend his janazah with their horses. He woke up, goes to Abdullah ibn Ahmad. He says, I saw this dream. He says, I saw the same dream too. I saw my cousin who was a shaheed. He came to me. And then when they woke up, the people, every relative who had lost a shaheed came and visited their relative in the dream and told them that they're here to participate in the janazah of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Now when his janazah crossed, just by their procession of his janazah, which has anywhere between the accounts of 300 to 400,000 people in that time, not today, that attended his janazah, it is mentioned that more than 90,000 people became a Muslim just through his janazah. Like, if somebody sees a living Muslim, no, imagine he was dead, his body has no life, and just the sheer number of his janazah, and when people saw that, they're like, people became Muslim. They're like, whoever this was, gotta be somebody important, gotta become a Muslim. Subhanallah. So coming back, so the Khalifa, Abdul Malik al-Marwan, he built the Dome of Rock. And then obviously, the second temple next to it. Now the second temple is the Jewish term. Obviously the brother is still learning, so just so you know, second temple. It is actually not the second temple, it's that the Wailing Wall that you have, and they were going to build that. Now, from 1099 to 1291, I skipped Hope in between. We don't have time because of that. So 1099 to 1291, Crusaders ruled. Okay, there was a Crusaders rule. Then, if you remember the first story that I did, my interview story as a Hamzah in the forest over there, what was the name of that person that I did the story on? Come on, man. I have given so many lectures. I still remember the story. You guys don't remember? Anybody remembers? I mean, the name is there, Mamluk. So, who was the famous Mamluk ruler? Come on. Mamluk, no. Sorry? Mamalik, come on. Saifuddin, huh? La, Saifuddin al-Quds. Quds, yes, Saifuddin al-Quds. Right? Saifuddin al-Quds was, and on the other side was Baybaras, those two rulers. They were Mamluks. Long story short, they were Mamluks. They were basically slaves who came into rulership. The whole story I did over there, and how the Mamluks actually defended the fall of Andalus at the hands of Mongols. The Mongols had come, and by the way, so those of you that want to know the story, next week, there's no Friday night here, that's my week off, but I'm doing the story at RCM. The Mamluk story, they have asked me to do some stories for them, so I'm doing the story of Palestine. And when the undefeated army of Mongols were defeated at the hands of the Mamluks. And Mamluks were in their first battle. So you have a lineage of dynasty of almost 90 years, undefeated, constant pillaging and killing from Baghdad all the way to Mecca. And here is Saifuddin al-Quds 9 months into the rulership, his first battle, and he defeats them. And what happens and what were some of the techniques? And for the first time, different color coordinations were used, different drum beats were used to be able to communicate in the forest. And it's a fascinating story of how this one person, coupled with Izz ibn Abd Salam, who was considered the Sultan al-Ulama. He was considered the ruler like Sultan. Nobody in history has had more impact as an alim than Izz ibn Abd Salam in 9 months, and how he prepared 313 khatibs in major masajids of Muslim lands, and how 1 or 2 surahs became the curriculum on which the entire ummah was raised before the call for defending Quds was made, and how everybody from every walk of the life, everywhere they came to defend. And the army of somewhere between 70 to 80,000 with Katabgha, on the other side with Mongols, and over here Barbarous, and how they defeated them and how led them into the valley. It's just beautiful. So we're going to do that in detail. We did that story over here, and we also did it. What happened? Mat, Mayyit. Alhamdulillah. Then in 1517, so that's where the Ottoman rule actually happened. So Mamluk end, and then Mamluks eventually give their kingdom to the Ottomans because they were already had allegiance with Ottomans in the first place at that time. And they take over until 1863. This is where I'm more concerned about. Okay? So 1863, there is a good majority of Jewish people living there. And they're living side by side with Muslims. Nobody's saying anything to them. Absolutely nothing is going, like they're happy. Everyone is happy. Everybody is allowed to worship. There's a documentary. It's called Shalal documentary. And I'm trying to get rights, or trying to get to pay the person so we can get the rights to show that documentary here. So that documentary is banned on YouTube. It's banned on any online platforms. They don't allow that documentary. That documentary is done by an Israeli woman that went into the Israeli archives using the press privileges and discovered how Israel has hidden the entire footage of the world from 1863 pictures and whatever they were able to capture back in the day in paintings, all the way to the video footage up till 1948, the Palestinian life and how it was captured. Because in order for them to sell the narrative that this was our land from day one and nobody lived here before, they had to completely hide that. So this documentary, Shalal, is actually the exposure of that particular Israeli agenda. This woman was kicked out of Israel because of this documentary, and now she lives in America, and which is second Israel anyways. So most Israelis live here. And the other part is that when she tried posting it, she was like banned from every platform. So it's worth watching the documentary. That's one. And the other one is called the documentary of Tantura, which is a small town. And Tantura now got released on YouTube after legal fights and back and forth. So you can watch Tantura. You have to pay $4 to watch it. And Tantura documentary is about this whole like how ethnic cleansing took place. How there is literally a guy, he says, I would have a machine gun and I would be given 200 bullets. And at the end of the day, I would never keep any prisoners. So he's like, how many people did you kill? Oh, I don't know. Some days 200, some days 300. I don't know. And he's laughing about it. An Israeli who lives today, he's laughing in an interview because he felt safe that on the other side there's another Israeli making a documentary, so he's never going to expose me. So these documentaries will open your minds. They're not something you can watch with your kids. So, FYI, but it's worth watching as an adult. It's in Hebrew language, but there's subtitles, so you'll understand most of it. Okay? Then the most important part is the 1897. So you had the first Zionist Congress. Now, who is the person behind Zionism? Theodore Herzl. Okay? So Theodore Herzl is the actual person who's behind this entire, or his other name is Benjamin Herzl. So Theodore Herzl is actually the person who actually came up with this idea of Zionism. The Zionist idea was not wholesale bought by Europe. Even the Jews didn't want it because the Jews were feeling very comfortable right now in Europe. They had not been persecuted in Russia yet. If you know a little bit of history, the Russian persecution takes place, the World War happens, they run south. Now they are settled in Britain. So this hasn't happened. But they're very happy and they're not very interested in this idea of a Jewish state run by Jewish people, a land that belonged to the Jewish. They didn't like that idea. Now, in 1901, what happens is they create a national fund. They create a fund. In the Congress over here, there was a big banner. There's a picture of the Congress, and you'll see this giant banner on it, which says, help the Jewish people build their homeland. So it was like wholesale support of US. UK and France were not on board yet. They're still like, we got to watch this. Like, we don't know where this is going. Okay, 1904 to 1914, something happens, and then I think there are some things that are missing over here. So 1904, 1914, Theodore Herzl, he meets some important people that are missed over here. So he meets some important people in the government. One of the most important person he meets over there is a person by the name, he's going to become very influential later, Balfour. And hence the Balfour Declaration, okay? So they're having this conversation back and forth, and Balfour realizes that this could be a very important tool, and they know that the world war is like about, so there's this, this is like right around that time, the political climate is very hot. So they're thinking, how can we make sure that Britain lands with Israel or lands with Palestine, because they saw the evident demise of the Ottoman Empire at the hands of Sultan Abdul Hamid. Now in 1904 to 1914, they try their best to bribe him. If you've not seen the show Sultan Abdul Hamid, I would, especially with the times we live in, everybody should go and watch that show. Because it will allow you to understand the politics in 5 seasons. Don't waste your life on it. Watch a show. I mean, I know some people can binge watch. I know, I told some older person, he came back, he's like, I'm done season 1. I'm like, I told you 10 days ago, brother, like what happened? It's like, oh, no, like, just keep watching. So just don't binge watch. It is designed to attract you, but the purpose is for you to understand the political climate. So they came to him with an offer, and he said to them, Palestine belongs to Muslims. It doesn't belong to the Ottoman Empire, and it's not for sale. That's where they realized there is no hope in Ottoman Empire. We need to get rid of it. Now, what happens? Get rid of that. Now, what happens is in 1904, in 1916, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. There's the 2 people, Sykes and Picot, right? They're from George Picot, and I forgot the initials of the person, Sykes-Picot. So there are 2 individuals, one from UK, one from France. They're sitting there, and now they have this entire Muslim land that Ottoman empires control. And they're saying on a breakfast, look, Ottoman Empire is going down. Let's divide up the Ottoman Empire. What portion would you like? What portion would I like? On a breakfast. These are 2 foreign ministers, and they're having a breakfast with one another, and their only concern is, how do we slice up and dice the Muslim Ummah? So all the countries that you see today, it's all Sykes-Picot. And it was the 2 individuals and their breakfasts, and we're all suffering because of that. Okay? They sat there and they said, okay, no, you give me Mosul, I'll take this. No, Mosul's mine, man. That's French were smart in negotiations, so they took Israel. And there was a small portion, so they took Palestine, and there was a small portion in Palestine that went to UK. Now, when they came back and they signed the agreement, this is before the Ottoman Empire they've already made the agreement. They've already said, when this happens, when the Ottoman Empire falls, we're going to go in these lands. The Arabian Peninsula belongs to us. The Mosul, the top area, French. All the Levant, hence the people in the Levant area are more French. That belongs to us. This belongs to the Britishers. Now, they started saying, who are the ruling powers there, and how can we break those ruling powers? I'll give you an example of Saudi. So the ruling power in Saudi at that time were the Ottoman empires. They were about to build one of the longest railway station that would take Hujjaj from Istanbul, from Ankara and Anatolia and those areas, all the way to Hajj. They had a train station. If you go to Medina today, they have a train station there. So they had a train that was running, and the other track that was running was a track that was going all the way to Mosul, Iraq. So they were at the pinnacle of their industrial revolution at that time, and they knew that if they carry on. So what happens? The first agreement the Britishers bring is they bring a group of bandits, outcasts that were kicked out of Arabia. They were living in the area of Kuwait. It used to be called Kut at that time. They were living in the area of Kuwait. That was the clan or the tribe of King Abdul Aziz. They went to him and they said, we need some hooligans. We need some people who can actually cause a ruckus. And they said, look, the current Hijaz area, that is under the control of a Dabbagh family. They are the lineage of Prophet ﷺ, and they have ruled that area, and they are the Sayyids of that area. We can't touch them right now. It's going to be too much political. Let's start with Riyadh. Nobody cares about Riyadh. So they bring Malik Abdul Aziz. Just like the Kufiya is a symbolic, anybody wearing a red shimal here? No, that's a red, come on, that's a red sweatshirt, Habibi. May Allah forgive you. I mean, at least it's red enough. So if you ever seen the red shimal, did you ever think where it came from? So when they were sitting down, King Abdul Aziz, and they were having their agreements, they said, okay, all of you guys wear white shimals because it's hot. So back in the day, if you look at all the pictures of Malik Faisal and stuff like that, back in the day, it's predominantly white. Then it became more red, right? So he's like, how do we know in the battle you are our allies? Because you all look the same to us. So they were sitting on a tablecloth that is red and white. Think of that tablecloths, picnic tablecloths in Pakistan, right? Red and white table. They were sitting on that tablecloth and they said, okay, we will send you this shimar that, he wears, the red ones. May Allah forgive you. So the red shimar we will send you, and this will be our sign on the battlefield. On the day of the battle, you will put on red shimars, we will not shoot you. That is why till this day, Al-Bassam, and what's at the end? Inglizi, Asli. In every shimar till this day it says, original from Britain. Till this day. Okay? So, these were the things that happened throughout history that we don't understand. So, Sai's Pico was that how are we going to divide Pakistan? Skip that part? Well, I can't skip. It's like Miskin, the only Saudi. We made him feel. See, the history that was taught to you was wrong, man. If you go to the Riyadh Museum, Malik Abdul Aziz, it was tyranny all over, and he entered and he saved the ummah. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? But people take it wholesale. It's the power of money. You advertise, you put nice, you put it together, you put a 3D rendition of the fight that took place. People are like, wow, and they buy it. Okay, so then what happens with Sai Speaker is done. The entire Middle East, entire Muslim. Now there was another agreement for Africa. That's a different story, right? How they divided Africa. That's another agreement. Then comes November 22nd, 1917. Balfour sends a letter to one of the lords in the parliament at that time. It was Arthur James Balfour. And he basically sends this declaration, which says that for the Jewish people, they own the land of Israel. The question is, why did he do that? Think about it. Why do you think he did it? Had nothing to do with money. Who controlled Palestine right now? French. British and French don't get along. Right? They don't get along. They were forced into an alliance because of the World War. They don't like each other. History tells us. They've been killing one another throughout the history. Right? They don't like one another. So if Britain goes and asserts its dominance by saying, we're going to break the Sykes-Picot agreement, now you have to make another agreement. So how do you sell to France that this land of Palestine must come to Europe and must belong to UK? You look at Zionism as a movement, political movement. I'm like summarizing a whole history just so you guys. So you look at the Zionist movement, you endorse the Zionist movement for 20 years so that when you are going to have a conversation with French, it's never about the Sykes-Picot agreement. It's about this new adoption of anti-Semitic laws that had passed through all Europe and that had passed through all of America and making people afraid that we don't want to be anti-Semitic. Are you going to deny the Jewish people their lands, O French people? UK had no business whatsoever supporting Jews. Now here's the trippy part. Here is UK trying to sell the land of Palestine to Jews in a declaration both from France and... On the other hand, Theodore Herzl is making arrangements with Uganda to send all the Jews to Uganda because that was their promised land. That is why if you look at the recent interview of the Ugandan president, he says, we never wanted them, we will never take them. Recently, like 2 weeks ago, he did that interview. He said, we kicked them out long before we knew what they were and we never wanted them. So they were never meant to go to Palestine. They were meant to go to Uganda. But Europe realized that if they go to Uganda and they leave from Britain and they go to Uganda as their promised land, the movement of Zionism, because Zionism is a secular movement, it's not Jewish. They really don't care about Palestine. What they care about is a land for Jews. It doesn't matter where it is. And Uganda seemed to be the best because of resources, climate, everything. They've done their research. That if we go and take over Uganda, hey man, we'll have our own state. That's all we want. Who cares about if it's Palestine or not? They're a very secular movement. The British people jeopardized the move of Jews from Europe to Uganda and cause political rifts just like they're doing in every single democratic country in the Muslim world today. Interference. And they do that. And then the entire movement shifts to Zionism and the support of Palestinian land for Muslims, for Jews. Now, Faisal Weizmann was the main person that became the front face in 1919. Now, Theodore Herzl and Balfour become secondary. He is a Jew. He is a Jew from Russia. He is a chemical professor. He is a professor in a very big university over there. And he has great relations between the Arabs. He had great so he was like a super hit run for them. A Jewish person, well-known, academic, who can blend with the Arabs, who can blend with, and he was like a perfect puppet. So they push him up and they bring him into this position that he becomes one of the primary faces of this movement for the next 2 years, for the next year and a half. Now, in this while, there's lots of details here, we're going to skip that. The Ottoman Empire basically finally on April 25th, 1920 falls. Now, what agreement has to be kicked in? Sykes-Picot. So they're like, okay, what do we do? Okay, what do we do and how do we get the Muslim world to now accept our agreement? Okay, how do we get the Muslim world to get our agreement? And when we divide their lands, we want to make sure that we leave a conflict zone in between, so that in every division, they never find peace. Hence the Turks and the Syrians and the Iraqis and Kurdistan in the middle. Hence the India, Pakistan and Kashmir in the middle. Hence the Rohingyas, that Myanmar area for the Muslims and separation of Assam. All of these things that are happening, they were not hypothetical things. They were very, very planned moves. Second thing they did is they said, you pit nationalism in these countries. So how do you do that? You go into their curriculums and you change their curriculums around. You go in these lands and create their curriculums. Help them in the name of colonization and better curriculum. What is Oxford? Why is Punjab student board is teaching Oxford books? Who cares? No, they care. They care because it's the colonization of the mind that needs to happen. It's a colonization of the mind. Do you know that most of the books that were written in India and in Pakistan, on Pakistan studies and Indian studies were both all written by British authors. They call them ghost authors. You don't know who they are. They're ghost authors. They wrote them and then they allowed very generously to put any other Muslim person to put their name on the book because, they're such, philanthropists, mashallah. It's really mind-boggling when you go and study history like that. So now you had this movement where finally a declaration comes and they say, you know what, that we are going to now basically start moving the Jews into the lands. I'm going to skip all of these details. You can find all of that in paper. And if anybody wants, I can share this document with them, inshallah. Okay. I'm going to skip to the 1947. Okay. So finally what happens is in November 29th, 1947, long story short, their entire plan culminates into the United Nations. What was the name of United Nations before United Nations? What was the United Nations called before United Nations? The Leagues of Nations. Who said that? MashaAllah. That's good. The Leagues of Nations. Right? So United Nations passes a resolution in November 29, 1947, and November 29th, 1947 to 49 was the War of Independence, as they call it. This is not the War of Independence. What are they getting independence from? They're taking over somebody else's land. But again, that's what the name is, the War of Independence. Go with the flow. 6,000 Jews were killed, and finally the declaration of the State of Israel was made in May 14th, 1948. Now, when that happened, a lot of things happened, but I want to show some of the clips and stuff that I've put aside for us to be able to watch a few things. Now, look at this important thing. From 1948 to 1960, now Jerusalem is divided between Israel, Jordan, along these, and Jordan holds the eastern part of the city. There was a whole, history behind that. Finally, in where's the UN Revolution? Israel accepts the 59th Mountain, Jerusalem. No, not this one. Where is the Suez Canal? Not this one. Yeah, so right before here. So there was a Sinai campaign that happens with a conquest where they wanted to take over the greater Sinai area, which was not part of their resolution. Now, in November 1951, United Nations Emergency Force was created. The whole idea for this force was to protect Israel, not to protect any other country. In the articles of establishment of this force, today it has changed, but the articles of establishment was that we need at United Nations, we need an emergency force in order to make sure that never ever does Israel wipe away from the map of this land. Ever. In consecution to that was in 1964, PLO, this thing that you see, the kufiya that I'm wearing. Who used to wear it? Yasser Arafat. Okay? This became a symbol of resistance and movement for the Palestinians. This became a symbol. Notice how the West is very, very amazing at creating terrorists and then relabeling those terrorists as superheroes later on. Okay? History tells us, recent history, Nelson Mandela, 25 years, terrorist. ANC, Nobel Prize for work for his peace after 25 years. Okay? Vietnam War, terrorism. When they lost it, it was the conquest, and and Vietnam and Ho Chi Minh City, the safest city in the world, should be given, the Ho Chi Minh was given all these accolades afterwards. Then you have over here, Yasser Arafat, terrorist, and then later on, work for peace. Nobel. So history tells you that it doesn't matter. You have Taliban. 20 years we heard Taliban terrorists. Today they left the country with that same people. Now they're actually getting into they're trying to get, like what is going on? History will tell you that whenever. So it's same thing is going to happen with Hamas. Today they're terrorists. Okay? And again, be very careful as Muslims. You don't want to be in any shape, way, or form linked to that right now. Don't get me wrong. Like if they declared it, like you don't want to get into that situation. They're waiting for that. Okay? But wait in time. Mark my words. Wait in time. It's recorded on YouTube. 10 years from now, they're going to be the freedom fighters. Do you remember the Contra freedom fighters? Who remembers that? The Contra freedom. Oh, Contra. Like, and then when they could not control them, they're like, these are the terrorist group. They actually trained the Contra freedom fighters in the lands in Miami, flew them on secret planes into America, trained them with guns, sent them back to fight to drop a government. When they dropped the government and didn't follow their lesson, oh, they're the terrorists. So history is filled with the West labeling us or even others that they don't align with their agendas as terrorists. And then when their objectives are completed, then they're no longer terrorists. Okay? So that's a story of. Now I wanted to show something here. Where's the remote? Okay, let me just. Now I ask Allah that this does not break on me today. Inshallah. Ads. This is anybody has paid YouTube? Is it still? Huh? I can't even escape that. Can you imagine? This is so bad. Oh my God, another one. There's always two? Can't skip? I can't. It's not letting me. So this is going to explain to you what I just explained, but in a visual format. Okay, how the map was agreed upon and what happened in the Sinai and all of that I just covered. This is a very beautiful explanation of that. So that's the first part. So the current state of Israel is way past the UN approved plan. So if anybody says, oh, what's the problem with Gazans? What's the problem with the people in the West Bank? The problem is that you are sitting on a land that don't belong to you. Sure, we have agreed as Muslims that fine, you want to split that land. The United Nations resolution made a map. But they went ahead and broke that resolution. Nobody wants to talk about that. Right? And you'll see how many resolutions they break. That, that's the Sinai and everything else that they wanted. Okay? Now, if you think this is it, I might go long today if you guys are okay with it, but it's important for us to learn this. Okay? But the idea is that they're not done here. And I'll talk about it in the end. They want to go all the way to half of Saudi. That's called the greater, if you pick up your phones and search, it's called the Greater Israel Map. You will see how big that is. They did that in 1967. This is what they're doing right now, is the other second expansion they need. So they're going to capture, mark my words, they're going to capture a whole bunch of land right now. It's going to go all the way to the Neom city of Muhammad ibn Salman and his country. Bro, you're in front of me. Don't sit in front of me next time, okay? I'm going to pick on a Saudi sitting in front of me. So, and if you look at the city, do you know the city that he called the Lion City? It's like a lion. It's going to be like 100 meters, 100 kilometers. That lion is right at the edge of where the Greater Israel border line lines. It's not trippy. It's like, just read in between the line. So that's the second issue right now. Right? Imagine we just start crossing the border. You guys, you guys are nice. Like, Canadians will not do that. Canadians are nice people. Canadians. Canadian, right? You're Canadian or you're American now? You're Canadian? Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. May Allah accept that. Any Canadians here, they're all good, inshallah. So, usually Americans invade land, right? So imagine if Americans just start deciding, oh, you know what, who cares, this is the border, I'm just going to go over, and just Americans start putting up tents and creating, literally getting builders from America to go and build subdivisions. And America is like, yeah, don't worry, if you live in the occupied Canada, then in that particular case, we will even give you more subsidies. You'll have better schools and better education. Okay, better medical.